Today's reading is from Luke chapter 19, verses 1 to 10. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to mutter, "He has gone to be the guest of a sinner." But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost." This is the word of the Lord.
Thank you, Laura. My name is Sarah Guinness, and it's not hard to pronounce Sarah. It's Sarah with an H. Got quite a lot of Sarahs in the church. My second name is Guinness, and when I make a booking in a restaurant, I usually say, "Oh, it's Guinness," like the drink. And there have been times, though, where people have mispronounced my name and called me Sarah Guinness, not being my favourite one. But my favourite one yet has been Sarah Genius. I like that one a lot. The other thing about my name is that it's really hard to shorten, but people have tried. I've had some posh friends in the past, and they've called me Sav, which I haven't particularly liked. I like Sarah, but Says isn't quite for me. So can you turn to the person next to you and tell them your name, how you pronounce your name, and other versions of your name that are acceptable to you? Andrew, Andy, whatever it might be. I think I might struggle to get this back today to recover. Is there a name that you're only happy for certain people to call you? Joel calls me Babe, which wouldn't be appropriate from anybody else. Andy and Sarah, do you have a special name for each other? Snugglebug? I don't know. Sweetie Pie, Darling. It's normally Mate. Oh my God, that's not very fitting to the occasion. She calls him Andrew. Okay. So turn to the person next to you now and tell them the name that nobody else can call you, but that intimate name that you have also been called by family and friends. It could be embarrassing. What is that name? Okay, we're going to try and recover this now. It won't be interactive anymore, you can relax. Okay. I'm glad there's been so much conversation. The story this morning from our Bible reading is about a man called Zacchaeus, which is a really unusual name. So I thought this morning that we'd shorten it to Zach. And because he's dead, he can't object. So he's going to be called Zach this morning. And Zach was a tax collector, not just any old tax collector, a really rich one In fact, he was the chief tax collector. And in Jesus' day, the Romans occupied the land of Israel. The Jewish people had to pay masses of tax to them. And some tax collectors, probably all of them to an extent, were corrupt. They didn't just collect enough money for the Romans, who were the occupiers and the invaders. They took extra over and above for themselves. They took money that they weren't owed from their own people. So let's just imagine that for a moment. One of your own kin, your own people betraying you and working for the occupying forces. That's like a Ukrainian informing on their own people to the Russians. Or, a bit more lighthearted, a Brentford supporter going to an Arsenal game. Unthinkable, unthinkable. Not only was Zach working for the Romans, he was ripping off his own people, other Jews, his own kin, all for the sake of comfort, or maybe just his nest egg. He was out for himself. And the thing is that the money might have been good, but I doubt that he had any friends. The community in Jericho would have been pretty small, and I wonder how it felt to be the most hated, ridiculed man in the village. The text tells us that he was short. He had so short that he had to climb a tree to see Jesus, and that can't have been easy, because people are always teased, aren't they? Especially when they're children, for being too short, too tall, too fat, too thin. Communities, he would have grown up in this community in Jericho, experiencing this from an early age. So maybe taking all of their money was payback for a lifetime full of jeers and mickey taking. But then one day, this celebrity that everybody was speaking about comes to Jericho. Everybody at this point had heard of Jesus and heard some of the stories, and they'd be chatting. Have you heard that as it was getting dark, Jesus and disciples fed thousands of people from nowhere? Yeah, my brother was healed. My mother can now walk. So-and-so can now see. In a time when there was no NHS, there was no medical intervention to speak of, people were having this life-changing encounter from an experience from one man, Jesus. And an encounter with him was enough to turn your life around. And Zach would have heard the rumors. He would have overheard his servants talking. He would have picked things up from his kids. He knew that Jesus was someone special. He was interested. He was curious. He wanted to see Jesus. But let's be clear, he did not want an audience with Jesus or even a conversation. He just wanted to take a look. He was curious. So Jesus is walking through Jericho, and there is this massive crowd, and he tried the normal way to see as part of the crowd, but let's remember everyone hated Zach, and he was really short, so no one was about to let him get to the front of the crowd. You know when you're driving, and you've got 2 lanes and they go down to 1, and there are some people who put their foot down and like, oh, just nip in while there's time, and then there are other people who are like, no, you don't, and then they start moving across, blocking him. It's exactly like that. There was no way Zach was going to get to the front. Zach didn't need to be reminded that he was short and hated. He could see the direction that Jesus was walking, and it was pretty clear that Jesus was going to walk straight through Jericho. He wasn't going to stop at the mayor's house or have dinner or stay overnight. So Zach decides to run ahead of Jesus and the crowd to get a better view. Now, no Middle Eastern man ran. It was the most humiliating thing to do. It was undignified. It was not done. But when you're the one that everyone loves to hate, what do you have to lose? A bit of embarrassment on top of everything else? Nothing, right? Now, he didn't climb the tree because it had some sort of religious experience and felt spiritual. He climbed the tree because he was curious and he was interested. So Zach positions himself in this big, leafy, fig sycamore tree, thinking he's going to have a great view, and Jesus gets closer and closer. Can you imagine how horrified he felt when he realized that not only had Jesus seen him, but he was walking up to him while he was up a tree? Not a good look. Now, let's just get back to names for a minute. My name, Sarah, means princess. Zach's name, ironically, meant pure one or upright. He was anything but. Does the meaning of your name match who you are? In Jewish culture, your name tells your story. Your name speaks about your spiritual potential. And they used to have this saying, that when you died and faced judgment, the first question that you'd be asked would be, what is your name, and did you live up to it? It says in the text that Jesus reached that spot, and he looked up at Zach, and he spoke to him. And he didn't say, "You're right, what are you doing up there?" He knew his name. How did he know his name? And did he call him by his birth name? Did he use his first name and his surname? Did he mispronounce his name? Did he shorten it like a friend might? Or did he use that intimate name for Zach, like the one that we reserve for the people closest to us? Was it Zacchaeus to the Romans and Zach to his family? Jesus knew his name. He spoke to him by name. And he said, "Can I come to your house for tea today?" Not, my, you've really lost your way. Not, I'm ashamed of you. Not, who do you think you are, ripping people off? Jesus doesn't try to preach to him or convert him. He doesn't belittle him. He doesn't punish him. He just asks to spend some time with him, to eat with him. The currency of the Middle East is hospitality. No matter who you are or who your guest is, it's a matter of honor, your honor, to entertain, to host, and to feed people. You're honored that they come to you, to receive from you. You're honored to be asked. And so to be the only person in the village, the only one who gets to host Jesus for tea, when he had planned to walk straight through Jericho, can you imagine? What an honor. This would be like King Charles coming to Brentford and people lying in the streets to welcome him, and then him like turning to Sarah and go, "Do you mind if we pop back to yours for a cup of tea?" Jesus invites Zach to be his host, and in doing so, he restores Zach's honor and respect in Jericho. He's not a laughing stock anymore, is he? In those few hours that Jesus spends with Zach, something changes in him. He's treated by Jesus as a friend, and all the important and holy people he could have hung out with in Jericho, he chose Zach. And something in his heart that day shifted and changed. The weight of rejection and shame was overwhelmed by both public and private affirmation, acceptance, and love from Jesus. The writer Luke doesn't tell us what they talked about. He just gives us the before and the after. And what a change. Zach goes from being this tight-fisted tax collector who took more than he should have done to making gushing promises to give half of everything he owned back to the poor and to repay people 4 times what he owed them. This wasn't some kind of like head change, a change of mind. It wasn't that Jesus sat and persuaded him or convinced him. This was an emotional, over-the-top, disproportionate, almost stupid gesture that came from a heart that was full. Full maybe for the first time ever. And what an encounter it must have been to have taken Zach from this place of emptiness and pain and isolation to this place of open-hearted, gushing promise to pay everyone back. Zacchaeus. Jesus knew his name. Jesus knows your name. He knows all of your names. He just does. He's always known your name. Perhaps he even has a special, affectionate name just for you that he calls you. He's always loved you. He's always seen you. It says in the Bible that God sings over you. When God uses our name, it's not because he wants to identify us and differentiate us from other people. It's not about saying, well, you're Sarah, but you're Sarah, so that people know the difference. Our names are indicators of our potential and our future. They speak about who we can become. And what does Jesus' name mean? It means Savior. When Mary became pregnant with Jesus, Joseph has a dream, and the angel says to him that Mary would give birth to a son and that she was to name him Jesus because he will save his people from their sins. Would Zacchaeus live up to his name? There's this amazing line at the end of our reading. Jesus says, "Today, salvation has come to this house because this man too is a son of Abraham." And I don't think he said this just to Zach and his family. I think he shouted it to the entire village in Jericho. He wanted to let everybody know that Zach was a son of Abraham just like them. He was a Jewish brother. He was one of them. He was a kinsman. He was part of them. He belonged. And he did this to restore Zach's place in the community, to restore his respect amongst his peers. His story changed. No longer was he the person that everyone despised and took the mick out of. No, because it was his home that Jesus chose to visit on his way through Jericho. This is like an influencer endorsing your product or a local business wanting to sponsor you. Jesus is saying to everybody, I'm really proud to stand with him. I'm really proud that he is my brother. He is my kin. He is my friend, and you should treat him as a friend too. And then he says, for the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. To seek and to save, not to tell off, not to punish, not to scold, to seek and to save, to search us out, to go looking for us like Jesus went in search of Zach up that tree, to seek and to save the lost. To what end? What for? Just for relationship. Jesus has no ulterior motive here other than to love and to affirm Zach, to remind him of his name, to remind him of his potential, to remind him of who he was and who he could still be. This passage is about identity, an identity that's redeemed and restored. Our identity is what we believe about ourselves. What we believe about ourselves dictates how we behave and how we live. And that day, Jesus recovers Zach's true identity. He went from being branded a sinner to a true son of Abraham. Who we are does not need to be who we were, does not need to be who we are or who we go on to be. We can break free of our past, we can stop cycles and patterns of behavior, but we can't do this without Jesus. And our story, like Zach's, are not finished. Thank goodness, we've all got a way to go. When we encounter and we experience Jesus, we can recover our true identity. Let's pray. God, I thank you for this quite simple story that's been told and retold through hundreds of years and written down for us. It reminds us of your kindness, your mercy, and your deep affection for us, your love for us, that you want nothing more than to be in relationship with us, that you see us, and that you see our past and how far we've traveled, but you also see all that we can be and all that you created us to be. Come by your Spirit today and whisper to our hearts that affectionate name that you have for us, that perhaps nobody else knows, not even us. Whisper to us your words of love and affirmation and acceptance. And may we have the ears to hear that today. Amen. Would you join me in standing as we worship? Do take this opportunity to respond and have a conversation with God about anything that's come up today.